Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy New Year. It's 2025. I can't believe it. And I hope you're having a fabulous morning already, even if you're not awake yet. We did not make it to midnight. We did at about 6 o'clock, I guess it was 7 o'clock, watch Dublin on the Earth Cam. We watched them count down to midnight, which was pretty cool. But we did not make it to midnight ourselves here in the Eastern time zone. Surely it's a good sign that the new year, 2025, is starting on Wellness Wednesday, because wellness is super important in all the ways. And there's a lot of components to wellness. But today we're gonna talk about a physical one, even though we frequently focus on mindset, because that's a lot of times where wellness starts. Today we're gonna talk about moving. If you're just stumbling on my page, I started Wellness Wednesday because I have been in a lifelong battle with anxiety and depression. And it was on my heart to start sharing with others, because I've learned so much from others in the process of sharing that it just much like peer support. Good morning, Victoria. Happy New Year. Much like peer support, when we share ideas and we share tips and tricks and things that have helped us, it makes us all better. So that is why I started Wellness Wednesday. And if you're here, I would love it if you let me know you're here. Facebook doesn't always show me all the things. So if I don't respond to you or acknowledge you, then it's just because I didn't see it, and I will as soon as I'm done. So I hope you enjoyed. If you saw last week's message, it was a very, very short Christmas message, probably the shortest Wellness Wednesday I've ever done, because we all know I like to talk. And I hope you found, because of that message, ways to be present in the day, because it was about being present, not what you were giving for presents or anything like that. And again, since we mostly dig into mindset, and I spent the last 4 to 6 weeks fighting with the after effects of a head cold, moving has been a big issue for me lately. More important than usual. When I say big issue, I mean more important than usual. So I feel like it's really important that we talk about how to move into and through 2025. So why is movement important to wellness? And by movement, I mean physical activity. I mean moving your body, circulating blood, circulating oxygen. So why is it important to wellness? Well, for starters, regular movement keeps your joints lubricated and your muscles strong, and thereby it reduces pain and stiffness and makes everyday things a little bit easier. I'm 51 years old, y'all. Moving becomes more important for me every single day. We don't stop moving because we get old. We grow old because we stop moving. And I have seen this time and time again with people I know and love who have retired, and stopped being active because they've retired, and they spend a lot of time sitting around, watching TV or whatever. I've seen this over and over and over again. I truly believe that we don't stop moving because we get old, that we get old because we stop moving. And I'm not talking about chronological age here. Now that quote is attributed to Dr. Kenneth Cooper, who ironically is the father of aerobics. It's super important. And part of the reason that this became such a big deal to me, is because, well, first of all, I caught a head cold right after Thanksgiving. I'm just going to tell a little bit about what got me here onto this subject today. I caught a head cold right after Thanksgiving, and it really seemed like it was going to just be a simple head cold. 3 or 4 days, day 4, I started to feel a little bit better. And part of the reason that I started to feel a little bit better, good morning, Miss Ann, is because when the sun came out, because it had been a little bit cold, when the sun came out, I made it a point to get myself out there in the sunshine and go for a walk. And on those days that I made it a point to get out in the sunshine and go for a walk, I felt tremendously better. Happy New Year, Michelle. Happy New Year, Ann. I felt tremendously better. The sunshine, the activity, the movement made a huge difference. Unfortunately, I frequently get some nasty postnasal drip after I've been sick in any way, a head cold, bronchitis, the sinus infection, anything like that. So that became a nasty cough, and the nasty cough turned into a case of costochondritis because I stressed out my rib cage. And unfortunately, often once you get costochondritis, it's easier to get it going forward. It's an inflammation. If you don't know what it is, it's an inflammation of the tissue and the muscle and mostly the cartilage around your rib bones. And then that was followed by, because of the over-the-counter medicines that I was using to treat the head cold and the cough, then my stomach said, okay, that's enough of that, and it fired up. So basically I became like the Michelin Man, where my stomach was kind of in an uproar and it was in distress, which caused more pressure on my ribs, and more coughing, and it was just kind of like a vicious little cycle there for a couple of weeks. But even in my foulest moments where I felt like I had an extra person in my stomach, and like I needed a bovine needle to make things go away, there was no doubt that the more I moved, if I got up and I moved around and I stood at my desk and I did things, even if I didn't go through a full-on exercise routine and I did a little bit of stretching, I felt better. We all know, even if we don't consciously know it, we've heard somewhere, somehow, that the best way to move gas out if gas is trapped in your body is to exercise. We all know that yoga sometimes does that. And I've learned over the years that sometimes the things that cause problems are not what they look like. That sometimes moving certain muscles, like stretching and going to jazzercise, believe it or not, actually helped my rib cage, and it helped the trapped gas that was building up because my stomach was in an uproar, instead of hurting it, even though our inclination and everything we've learned and everything we've been taught is to sit or lay and rest and not do anything when we're in a situation like that. But I honestly believe that I would not be this much better, still fighting a little bit with some tenderness in my rib area. I would not be this much better if I hadn't insisted on moving. And more importantly, I had this jazzercise goal, and I wanted to complete 150 classes for Fit Club in the year 2024. And I was like 3 or 4 classes away when the ribs and the stomach fired up. And I was frustrated, y'all. I was like, every time I try to go for a jazzercise goal or challenge, and it's a little bit emotional for me, that every time, good morning, Patricia, Happy New Year. Every time I would try to go for a challenge like this, I would end up either getting sick or getting hurt. And I don't get sick that often, maybe about once a year. But it just seemed that the timing always worked out that way. And I was very frustrated. And it would have been very easy. And I think it's easy for a lot of us in that situation where it hurts, we're uncomfortable, whatever the situation may be, to just want to kind of curl up in bed and stay there. Except that with the ribs, laying in bed didn't help either. So I grew very, very frustrated, and I thought I wasn't going to hit this goal. And then Eric said to me, well, can't you do jazzercise without the weights? Because I was worried about my ribs, and I didn't want to make them any worse than they already were, because I was still coughing, and that already made it worse, and I was still trying to get my stomach under control. And a little light bulb went on, and, I had done a whole live video with one of the jazzercise instructors to promote jazzercise months before about how any of the jazzercise workouts could be modified. And I promise this video is not all about jazzercise, but I'm just trying to explain how I got here to this topic for today. That any of the workouts could be modified for any level, anybody that needs anything. And so when Eric said, well, can't you do jazzercise without the weights? I went, oh my gosh, yes, I can. So I went to a jazzercise class, and I didn't get down on the floor for the floor exercises because my rib will not allow that right now. And I did not use weights. I did the hand motions. And if it felt like I was stretching a little bit too far, I backed off, and I got through a whole jazzercise class, and I felt so much better. Everything moved better. Everything felt better. Everything hurt less. My energy levels came back up. And at that point, it had been probably 10 days since I had done anything but maybe go for a walk. And I was just, it's amazing to me how we know these things, and then we still don't do them when we need them the most. So I'm very thankful for Eric reminding me that I could go to Jazzercise and modify for my needs, because of that, I finished that 150 class goal for 2024, despite the rib problems and the stomach issues. And as I continued to go to Jazzercise and as I continued to move around more, and of course treat the stomach issue with yogurt and live active cultures and all the things and a nice clean diet, because I did those things, mostly because I kept moving, the stomach problem stopped being a problem. And that was less pressure on my ribs. And now my ribs have started to heal and feel better. And I've been reminded that I can still physically move, even though I have a little bit of a restriction. I just had to reframe the way I was thinking about it. And I had to, not make excuses, but make modifications instead. So that's what this is all about today, is that movement, because it's super important. So again, why is movement important to wellness? Again, regular movement keeps joints lubricated. It keeps muscles strong. It helps to reduce pain and stiffness and make everyday things easier. Physical activity improves cardiovascular function and helps to recover faster from illness. I can definitely attest to that. Good morning, Miss Barbara. Happy New Year. Moving circulates blood and oxygen, which increases energy. Yes, even when you're tired. So we have a tendency to be like, I'm tired, I can't do this. But oftentimes when we exercise in some form or fashion, we help to increase the energy, move the oxygen, move the blood, and we are less tired because of it. So it helps to combat those mid-afternoon slumps also. It releases endorphins, and this is one of my favorite things. It releases endorphins, which improves mood and reduces stress and anxiety. So if you've ever seen the movie Legally Blonde, you might remember the line where Elle says, in the courtroom, Elle says, I just don't think that Brooke could have done this. Exercise gives you endorphins. Endorphins make you happy, and happy people just don't kill their husbands. They just don't. Good morning, Miss Paula. Happy New Year. So there is real science to that, to exercise of any kind, movement, activity, especially out in the sunshine, in nature, increasing all these, releasing these endorphins and increasing oxygen flow to the brain, which also helps with your focus and your cognitive function. There's so much there. There's so many reasons to move. So the endorphins, that helps with our mental wellness. Motion is lotion. Yes. Yes. In fact, I just mentioned that, Paula, about it keeping joints lubricated and muscles strong. Completing even the smallest physical tasks helps to build confidence and resilience, which is super important. Because I'm going to be honest with you, anytime that I have been sick, because I don't get sick very often, maybe once a year, I tend to get leveled when I do get sick. I mean, I get hit pretty hard. But half of that is our mentality, is when we think that we can't do anything but lay there, we perpetuate the problem. Back during the pandemic, a family member of mine got very, very sick, and ended up in the hospital with the pneumonia that was associated with that. And some of that was because they were so tired and so exhausted, they didn't move. And one of the things that we heard very frequently throughout that pandemic was that even though we are tired and even though our bodies are fatigued, that it is important to get up, sit up, move around, to keep things moving through our body instead of just sitting there and collecting bacteria, breeding, whatever, all of those things. So, and physical activity can actually improve your sleep so that your brain works more efficiently. So there's a brain component here. There's a thinking component where we can think more clearly and we can lift that brain fog and we can function better. And this relates to even things as far down as dementia. All this functions better when we're active and we're moving. And as Paula said, we're using motion as lotion, because it's not just for our physical body, it's for our brain and it's for our emotions, and it applies to all of that. Stronger bodies handle physical tasks better, even down to just household items, errands, work demands, things like that. Movement increases vibrance and feelings of capability and vitality over time. Mobility means, to a lot of people, mobility means freedom and independence. And that's part of my problem, is if I can't physically do it the way I would normally do it, I get aggravated and I don't want to do it at all. Kind of an all or nothing thing. So when Eric said, I knew that I could do jazzercise without the weights to modify for my ribs. But when Eric said that, a little light bulb went on, because I'm such an all or nothing type person when it comes to stuff like that, that it never occurred to me that I could still accomplish my goal with a little bit of modification. So that's important to remember, because we're going to get back there in just a minute. Again, it increases vibrance, feelings of capability, vitality over time. And this is several years ago. So when I was putting this together, I was reminded of something. Several years ago, we had a well-known figure in the community who passed away doing a very important community event that involved running. And they were very young. And those of you that are watching that know who I'm talking about, I don't need to say who it is. They were doing a very important event for a local nonprofit, and they passed away while they were doing it. And for weeks afterwards, my daughter started giving me a really hard time about my running, and used that person as an example of how running doesn't help, and that it could actually kill me instead. And it took a little while to get this information out of her, what she was thinking, because she just kept kind of bashing my running and giving me a hard time about it. And like, well, it didn't help so-and-so, look what happened. And so finally I had to say, okay, once I understood what was going on in her brain, that she was scared for me because of what happened to this person. Once I understood what was going on in her brain, I said to her that I didn't run because I wanted to live longer. In fact, longevity is not really on my, I want to live long enough to see my grandkids grow up and all of that stuff. So longevity is in there somewhere. But my running and my physical exercise, and I'm not saying you have to run, this is just an example, that physical movement is part of having a better quality of life while I'm here. And I said to her at that time, I would much rather die doing something I love, something physical, something that gives me joy, helping in the community, whatever, than laying in a hospital bed after 6 months or a year because I couldn't physically move. And my quality of life was in the toilet anyway, basically. And after that, she seemed to understand, and she stopped giving me a hard time about the running that I was doing. And movement creates opportunities, like the example I just gave. Movement creates opportunities to help the community, to connect to other people, such as through fitness classes, community events that involve physical activity, or just walking with friends, your significant others, your kids, your grandkids. There's tremendous opportunities out there when you get out and you play games outside, or you go for a walk, or any of those things. There's opportunity there to connect in a way that you won't connect in front of the TV, and that you won't even necessarily connect over food. But that it's just a different type of connection that keeps us all active and keeps us all together. So bottom line is, our bodies were designed to move, and our brains too. I mentioned a little bit about retirees, people that I've known. I know someone who became less mobile over time because of a neurological thing that was going on. And as they became less mobile, they also became, there were things going on neurologically that made it difficult for them to speak. And then once they retired, it went downhill really quickly. Like it was like a very, very gradual decrease, and then it went downhill really, really quickly. Sometimes this happens with people that have strokes or people that have major cardiac events. Even though they could over time, if they did their rehab and they gradually built up their strength, they could maybe not get back to running marathons or anything like that, but a little bit of physical exercise like yoga or walking or things like that. And they just don't, because they tell themselves that they can't because their bodies are not the same. Good morning and Happy New Year, Raquel. Because they tell themselves that their bodies are not the same. Or they retire and they don't have that purpose, that motivation to get out every day and move and be active. The things just kind of seriously start to go downhill from there. And there's usually a very definitive line in the before and the after. So our bodies were designed to move, and our brains were designed for that too. And the more active we are and the more we engage with other people, the better quality of life we're going to have for whatever time it is that we're here. You know, we can absolutely extend our longevity. Good morning, Darren. Happy New Year. We can absolutely extend our longevity. And we've been proving it for decades now that everybody is living longer. But that doesn't necessarily mean that their quality of life is better. And that's really what's important, because who wants to live for an additional 10 or 20 years if we're bedridden, or if we're stuck in a chair, or if we don't feel like we can do anything because of those things. There are options, there are ways to engage, there are ways to move. So where the heck, now that we've gone through all that, where the heck do we start with this? If you're not somebody that's moving on a regular basis, or you're afraid of exercise because you've been injured at some point, where do you start? Well, you start with your head. So we're talking about moving, and we're talking about physical movement, but it really starts here. A lot of times we have this I don't have the time, I don't have the energy argument. And I've used that same argument, even though I've proven to myself over and over again, the difference is I've used the same argument in that I don't have time. And without fail, if I'm under a lot of pressure from school deadlines, because most of you know that I'm studying for my Master of Science, if I roll out of bed and my brain's already moving and I'm already like, I got to do this and I got to do this and I got to do this, I will cut out the exercise. It'll be the first thing to go. I will roll out of bed. I will walk over to this desk, and I won't even see the shower till 4 o'clock, because I'll just get to work. But it's bad. And the reason it's bad is because if I take that 30 minutes to exercise in some form or fashion, again, it can look like a walk. It can look like gardening in the yard. It can look like a yoga routine, some stretching. But if I take that 30 minutes to move that blood, to move that oxygen, to move those muscles, my brain works more efficiently, which means I'm working more efficiently and I'm getting more done in the time I have. So I'm probably making up, and I've proven it to myself over and over again, I'm probably making up for that 30 minutes at some point later in the day that I took out. So when we use that time energy argument, we are negating something that can actually make us more efficient, that can make us function better, that can give us more energy. And we're deleting that with the same argument that it fixes. So that's the number one thing, is to start with our head and stop telling ourselves that we don't have the time or the energy, because getting out and getting some physical movement will change that for us. We need to reframe weight loss goals and things like that to goals that prioritize how we want to feel. Maybe instead of I want to lose 20 pounds, it might look like I want to have more energy to play with my grandkids. I just spoke with a friend a couple weeks ago who has a new grandbaby and has been frustrated because work has been busy and there hasn't been time and there hasn't been energy to work in an exercise session. But they want to have more time to play. They want to have more energy to play with their grandchild as their grandchild gets over. So they're concerned about their weight. So you can reframe a goal like this to something that's a little more positive, to where you feel like you're adding something for yourself instead of taking away something for yourself. And that makes you that much more likely to succeed. Maybe that goal is I want to feel less stiff when I get up. Well, I can tell you that as I get older, feeling stiff when I get up in the morning is not the problem. It's how long I feel stiff after I get up. And the faster I get moving and the more I move my body, the more those muscles loosen up and the more that stiffness disappears quicker. So that's because I'm lubricating. As Paula said, it's because I'm using the lotion in my motion to get everything moving and get that stiffness out of there. Right now, when I wake up, my ribs are sore and they're stiff because of that pressure all night and then that sudden movement up. It takes a few minutes to adjust. But if I just keep laying there, or if I sit right down as soon as I get out of bed, it takes longer for that to move out. Where right now, I don't even know my ribs are there because I've been up moving already this morning. So we need to reframe those weight loss goals into something that is more positive and that prioritizes how we want to physically feel, how we want to mentally feel versus the number on the scale. We need to reframe that time and energy argument, knowing that even though we have a hard time, and I know I do, taking that time to do the exercise, do the physical activity, whatever it is, dance around the living room with the vacuum cleaner, whatever that physical activity looks like. It can be really simple. But when we use the time energy argument, we're negating the very thing that gives us more energy and gives us more efficiency with our time. without fail. Even, when I was running a big fishing tournament, that would just be, 12 hours a day for 3 days, just go, go, go. If I took the 30 minutes to exercise, I could get through it that much better than I could if I didn't. There was no question about it. So it's been proven over and over again. It's something you can certainly Google, how movement can improve things. Sometimes when my sinuses are locked up, I'll walk in the sun and my sinuses clear. These are all important things. So we have to reframe those arguments that we use that tell us that we can't move, or that we don't have time, or that we don't have the energy. Just like we need to reframe other excuses, like if you can't run, you're looking at me and you're probably thinking, okay, Donna, I can't run. I'm not running. I'm not running unless something's chasing me. You don't have to run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't do impact, elliptical machines are fabulous for mimicking very similar motions to running and building strength in the legs with no impact. If you can't do the impact, you can also do yoga or Pilates. They're fantastic for stretching and strengthening without any impact. You have problems with your back, so there are modifications in certain yoga or Pilates exercises you don't do because of that problem. There are ways to modify, just like when Eric said, can't you go and do jazzercise without the weights? That was me modifying so that I didn't add any additional stress to my ribs, but so that I got in there and I started moving those muscles and that cartilage and all that stuff that's so cranky right now. Then there's no question that I felt better afterwards. I just had to reframe the excuse and reframe the goal. So small changes can have a huge impact. Like I said, walking, stretching, or gentle yoga. Consistency is more important than intensity. I know we hear all these things like, for exercise to do any good, you need to do like 15 minutes of high intensity every single day, or whatever. But if all you're doing is sitting on the couch or sitting in a chair, if you're sitting at a desk all day and then you come home and you make dinner and you plop down on the couch, guess what? 15 minutes of low intensity is a lot better than sitting there, right? So the consistency is more important than the intensity, especially when you're just getting started. So you want to start with small, achievable goals, like a 20-minute walk every other day. Maybe it's a 10-minute walk every other day if it's something you don't usually do. If you have trouble with your joints or whatever, so your movement is limited, setting a step goal every day, whatever that looks like. One yoga class a week, a bike ride twice a week. There's lots of things that you can do, get out. You've been wanting to maybe mess with your yard or start a garden. Now is the time. Getting out there and working on that for a few minutes every day will make a huge difference in your physical, mental, all of it. So small changes can have a huge impact, and those can look like anything you want as long as you're moving more than you are now. Make it fun. Dance. When I got frustrated because line dancing classes kept getting canceled or changed, where I couldn't go to class anymore, and I got tired of forgetting all the dances I loved, I started line dancing at home so that I could remember them. Now I have a solid hour workout with a playlist that involves line dancing, so I can remember those dances. And if I can't get outside because it's raining, or because I'm being a baby because it's too cold, or whatever the case may be, then I can still get, or I can't get to jazzercise, I can still get a great workout at home that's fairly low impact and keep my brain moving and lubricated because it's remembering those dances, and get some physical activity at the same time. You can garden, active hobbies, a little bit of pickleball. Like I said, just a daily walk. Play with the grandkids outside. When your family comes over and visits, we had a great 2 Christmases ago. We were just looking at a picture, big group of us. It was colder than blue blazes that day, but we were all outside playing all these different yard games, cornhole, few other things, instead of sitting around inside talking to each other. So that was definitely probably our most moving Christmas in a few years, right? So there's lots of ways. It's important that you change it up, and that you keep it interesting, because if you don't love it, it's harder to stick to. But the point here is that you don't have to be a pretzel to do yoga. You don't have to be a runner to go out for a walk. It doesn't have to look like you think it has to look like. When I first started doing 5Ks, I was so stubborn. I wouldn't stop and walk. I wasn't doing the 5K, in my opinion, if I couldn't run that 30 minutes without stopping to walk. Well, when you've been injured, when you want to complete something and you've got to stop and walk a couple of times to do it, You learn that it doesn't have to be perfect to get it done. Done is better than perfect. So listen to your body, but make sure it's actually your body talking. Make sure your body is the one that's telling you to back off or move differently, and not your brain telling you that you can't do this. And the most important thing is to prioritize it as self-care. You'll schedule a massage, you'll schedule a pedicure, schedule the exercise. Again, whatever it looks like. If it looks like a dance session in your living room with the vacuum cleaner for 30 minutes so that your floor gets vacuumed and you get exercise, totally fine. Crank up the music, get some house cleaning done. I don't know about you, but scrubbing our shower for me is sometimes an upper body workout that can't be compared to anything else. So whatever it is, listen to your body, but make sure it's your body that's talking and not your brain, not your excuses, not all the reasons you think you can't do it, or that you don't have time. And prioritize it as self-care. Put it on the schedule, put it on the calendar, whatever. So my call to action to you, my challenge to you, is to set one movement goal for 2025. And if for the whole year is too much, and I get it, sometimes it is, because remember I said small little steps, small little changes. If that's too much, start with January. Set a movement goal for January. Set a movement goal for this next week. Whatever it is, set the goal. Drop it in the comments for me, so that I can see what that goal is, or message it to me so that I can hold you accountable, because it's really important. So if that means that, you've been doing a lot of sitting and you're listening to me and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't think I ever move other than to go to the bathroom. Well, then maybe that looks like if you're at work, when you go to the bathroom, you walk the long way around, that you maybe do 10 jumping jacks, whatever. Maybe instead of just going to the bathroom, maybe it's a 10-minute break from the desk to move your body. Maybe you can have a walking meeting instead of a lunch meeting. There are lots of ways to introduce movement or increase movement in your world. So again, I challenge you, set a movement goal, whether it's for the year, whether it's for January, or whether it's for this next week, or even just today. Set a movement goal. Drop it in the comments if you want to share it with us. Send me a message if you want me to help hold you accountable. But let's do it. Set that goal. Remember, it's not about living longer. It's about living better. It's about a better quality of life while we're still here. And we need to start small and celebrate every step along the way. I celebrated that I made it to my jazzercise goal, even though I started the year with 7 pound weights, went up to 9 pound weights, and by the time I was done, couldn't use any weights because of my ribs. I still completed the goal, and that was huge, especially since, like I said, for a while it seemed like every time I was getting close to a goal in jazzercise or a challenge they were doing, something would happen, and it was never jazzercise's fault, but something would happen to keep me from getting there. So this became about so much more than just hitting the goal. It became about overcoming whatever it was that I kept telling myself and my brain was keeping me from it. So it's not about living longer, it's about living better. Make sure you start small and celebrate every single step. Even if you had to modify to reach your goal, that's okay. It's what got you there. Celebrate it and focus on joy and consistency. Focus on doing things that bring you joy and that you can do consistently. And remember that done is better than perfect. Again, you don't have to be a pretzel to do yoga. Usually it starts with yoga and ends with the pretzel, not the other way around. You don't have to go out and run a 5K tomorrow. None of those things. That activity can look like whatever works for you that gets you doing it. Our bodies were designed to move, our brains too. I firmly believe that we either use it or we lose it. So remember those things. And I am starting a new health challenge in my VIP group on Monday. So let me know if you want in. There's never any strings attached to that, but it helps a little bit with accountability. There's other people checking in. So if you want to be part of that, let me know and I'll get you added to my group so for when I roll that out on Monday. And most importantly, if you found this helpful, please share. Somebody else might find it helpful too. So let's make it a moving 2025. Let's get those bodies moving because it's going to help us mentally, physically, emotionally. It's going to do all the things, as Paula said, and I appreciate this phrase. I'm going to use it a lot. Motion is lotion. Let's get those joints lubricated. Let's get those brains lubricated, and get moving for 2025, and see what a difference it can make. Let me know what your movement goals are, whatever those look like. And again, if you found this helpful, please share. And I will see you next week. In the meantime, Happy New Year and be well. Bye.